Are we going to see Matthew Hayden naked this winter?
Great question. I don't know what your plans are when you're in Brisbane, but yeah, I
I'm not going
suppose
to coerce him into getting naked.
it all depends on Joe Root, doesn't it? I think that's the way that most people will see it anyway. Yeah, his fourth Ashes tour, I think we will
Surely.
see him score 100. I think we will see Root score 100. I think if you look at his record over the past 3 years, I find it very hard to believe that he'll go to Australia and won't score 100 because part of it is because I think the 100 chat is a little bit of an anomaly at the moment, and that might be maybe that's generous to Root, but particularly the fact that he averages 35 there. It's not like he's averaging 20 in Australia. He's got 950s. He's got an 89. I feel like the difference between one of those being a 100, the 89 being a 101, there would be so much less focus, I think, on Root coming into this tour. It's just that obsession with milestones and statistics that we have in this sport compared to almost any other that means there's that extra scrutiny on it. But yeah, I would go as far as to say I wouldn't be surprised if he does it in the first test and completely puts to bed any conversation about it. I also think England desperately need him to because their record when Root doesn't score runs over the past few years is pretty poor, and their record when Root does score runs is really, really good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily, I don't necessarily ascribe to this specific point of view, but the talk of Root's legacy being dependent on it, I think is a bit overblown. Kind of similar to you, like it all feels like a bit of an anomaly anyway. And I feel like if you're going to judge him harshly because, as you say, he only averages 35 in Australia, then you're sort of missing the point of the sport, really. And yet, at the same time, if he has a good series where he scores more than 100 and England win, there is no debate anymore. Like, I mean, he is already England's great, but that's modern great status. Put him on Mount Rushmore stuff.
Yeah.
Certainly in terms of Ashes clashes, because that's the company he'll be moving into.
I actually think I'd be interested to hear what you think on this, but I think the more damning stat about Root in Australia is not that he's not scored 100 there, it's that he's never won a test there. He's played 14
Oh, wow.
and never won in Australia.
Wow.
Stokes has obviously not won one as well from a much smaller sample because he missed 17, 18. But I think that is a bigger black mark almost against him. Not necessarily him as a player because, I think he clearly wasn't always playing in the best sides. I think if you look back at the 17, 18 and 21, 22 tours in particular, those weren't great England teams by any means. But I think that probably matters more in terms of legacy. If he were to somehow go down there and England don't win again this winter, and he ends up with a career record of 19 tests in Australia, maybe 100 or two, and thereafter this one, and 0 wins, I think that would be rightly held against him more so than if England were to, let's say, win this series 3-1 with him scoring 450s and no hundreds.
Yeah, so what you've basically done there at the end is you've summed up internet discourse because because the parameters will shift. It's like,
Yeah.
right, you've got the 100, but you haven't won yet, so that's the stick we're going to beat you with now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree. I think that's ultimately cricketers and batters tell us that it's not necessarily about the runs; it's about the results. Joe Root a few weeks ago said pretty much exactly the same. And then also said, but if I do my job and score loads of runs, we've got the best chance of winning. And plain and simple, that's how it is.
Yeah, I also just, in terms of the reasons people would have for thinking he wouldn't score 100 in this series, I suppose the possible arguments you could give are he doesn't have necessarily a great head-to-head record against some of those quicks, although, again, that's partly influenced by the fact he's just played against them loads, so obviously they've got him out a lot.
Lyon as well, I think, isn't he?
Yeah. And I suppose maybe pitches, because I think we're, over the last probably 4 or 5 years in Australia, it has been quite different to what we've seen before. If the ball is doing a lot and if the average score is coming down significantly, then that's obviously not going to help Root's chance of getting 100. But I still think we've seen him score runs over the last 3 years in every set of conditions you can possibly come up with. I'm still pretty confident that he's going to do it.
Do you think he has a bounce problem? And I don't mean the bouncer. I mean specifically on his game relating to even balls wide of off stump that he might be able to drive on the front foot, but not quite in Australia.
Yeah, and I suppose there's that sort of school of thought around his release shot as well, the sort of steer down to deep third past the cordon, which sometimes You maybe it's harder to play with the same control in Australia. But I think it's actually been really interesting listening to Root over the past probably year or two talk about batting in quite a different way, where he stopped talking about technique in the same way and seems to be talking about the sort of problem solving style of and the tactical side of batting, I suppose, a bit more. So it'll be really interesting to see whether that's something that he changes a bit, and whether he puts away that release shot a little bit more, and whether he scores more or less freely and all that sort of thing. But I don't think this, who am I to say there's a glaring technical weakness in Joe Root's game that's going to stop him getting a ton down there?
Yeah, there was quite an interesting moment during COVID, and he's spoken about this a few times, has Root, when he says he basically laid out his game on a table essentially and reworked bits. And he said he's done that ever since, before every major series, when he's basically had time to. And he mentioned that he would do that ahead of Australia. And the way I see it, or certainly the way I've decided to see it, is that it's a bit like, I don't know, a utility belt, where if you want to add something, you've got to take something off. And I wonder if he does change that release shot, or rather, if he does stop playing that release shot, he will essentially be working on what the equivalent would be, what gets him that single, what gets him rotating the strike. And I feel like, because, as you say, of all the problem solving he's done in the time since that summer in 2020, he will have a better idea of what that shot might look like in those conditions with that bounce against the different bowlers he's going to face. I mean, the ramp over the shoulder, over the cordon, gets a lot of plaudits, because absolutely it's the most showstopper of the new shots he has. But probably quite a few others have gone under the radar, really, because you don't necessarily get a boundary out after them. You just get someone else on strike.
What do you think then? He'll get 100 this tour?
I have him down for 2. And I think if England win the Ashes, he'll have scored or have to score 3.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I'll go 100 in the first test and 1 more from that point on, so 2 total.